We here. This is the building officially where she fell from. We just posted up. The wind is kind of blowing, but one of them fell over. Ooh. Well, I'm gonna start this off, I want to say rest in peace to Tabitha. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like, the way this happened, everything that went on is bogus, and she did not deserve this. And I'm not gonna lie, like, she was a real bitch.
How well do you truly know the person sharing your bed? It's a question that haunts us all, isn't it? We trust. We love. We let people into our most vulnerable moments. But sometimes the person lying next to you is capable of unthinkable things. July 7, 2022. Chicago's Uptown neighborhood. 7:43 p.m. A woman's body falls 5 stories through the Chicago night air. Naked. Broken. Landing in an alley with a sound that will echo through a courtroom for months to come. 3 days later, when Chicago police questioned the man from that 5th-floor apartment, they captured 6 words on body cam that would become the defining confession in one of the city's most disturbing homicide cases. "I threw the bitch out the window." Those 6 words. Casual. Almost dismissive. As if he was talking about discarding trash. But the woman who fell wasn't trash. She was Tabitha Tanner. She was 33 years old. She had dreams. She had people who loved her. And she trusted the wrong person. Before we dive deep into this case that exposes the deadly intersection of deception, jealousy, and violence, take just a moment to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Cases like Tabitha's need to be told, remembered, and learned from. Your support helps us bring these crucial stories to light. Tonight, we're going to examine not just how Tabitha died, but how the systems that should have protected her failed at every turn. Tabitha Delane Tanner entered this world on December 6, 1988, in Chicago, Illinois. Growing up on Chicago's South Side, she was raised primarily by her mother, Antoinette, though she maintained a relationship with her father, Ben. Her childhood wasn't easy, financial struggles were constant, dreams often had to wait. But Tabitha was determined. Former classmates described her as quiet but resilient. Someone who kept her circle small but her ambitions large. She graduated high school with one clear goal: she wanted to be a nurse. Can you imagine that drive? Working retail during the week, picking up weekend shifts at a neighborhood diner, all while saving every tip, every spare dollar, for nursing school. Her co-workers remember someone they could count on. She covered shifts when others couldn't. She remembered customers' regular orders. She was building something. Her Instagram tells the story of someone who found joy in small moments. A perfect cup of coffee. The Chicago skyline at sunset. Her vintage costume jewelry collection. These weren't the posts of someone living lavishly, these were celebrations of simple pleasures. But there was something her carefully curated social media didn't show. A pattern that friends had begun to notice. Tabitha had a tendency to fall for the wrong men. Men who took advantage of her generosity. Her forgiveness. Her belief that people could change if given enough chances. She always saw the best in people, one friend would later tell investigators. Even when the rest of us saw red flags. It was this optimism, this faith in human goodness, that would lead her to a birthday party in early 2022. A night that seemed full of possibility. A night where she would meet Tyson Tillman. What she couldn't have known, what none of us can know when we meet someone new, is that the charming man buying her drinks and listening to her nursing school dreams was harboring secrets that would ultimately cost her everything. Tyson Tillman. 38 years old. To his neighbors on North Magnolia Avenue, he was just another face in Chicago's bustling uptown neighborhood. Unremarkable. Quiet. The kind of person you pass in the hallway without a second thought. But Tillman's record told a different story. 8 felony convictions stretching back to 2003. Nearly 2 decades of cycling through the criminal justice system. Mostly drug-related offenses, possession, distribution, the kinds of charges that spoke to addiction and poor choices rather than violence. The pattern was predictable: arrest, conviction, release, repeat. Each time, he'd serve his time, get released, and within months or years, he'd be back in the system. But here's what's chilling about reviewing his record: none of these previous crimes hinted at the capacity for the violence that was coming. His neighbors on North Magnolia described him exactly how dangerous people want to be described: quiet, kept to himself, never caused trouble. It's terrifying, isn't it? How someone can live among us, completely camouflaged by normalcy. But perhaps most disturbing was what investigators discovered about Tillman's personal life. At the time he met Tabitha, he wasn't just another single man looking for love. He was expecting a child with his girlfriend. Think about that for a moment. A man on the cusp of bringing new life into the world while simultaneously constructing a web of lies that would ultimately destroy another life entirely. Phone records revealed the extent of his deception. Meticulous planning. Carefully timed visits to his apartment. Messages to multiple women within minutes of each other, crafting entirely different narratives about his whereabouts. This wasn't impulse. This was calculation. Court-appointed psychologists would later identify impulse control issues and difficulty managing anger. But his defense team would paint him as someone struggling with untreated mental health issues. The prosecution saw it differently: a manipulator who knew exactly what he was doing when his carefully constructed house of cards began to collapse. And collapse it would. Because on July 7, 2022, two worlds that Tillman had worked so hard to keep separate were about to collide with deadly consequences. Picture this: you're pregnant with your boyfriend's child, trusting him with your future, your vulnerability, your love. At the same time, across town, another woman believes she's building something real with that same man. She has no idea you exist. This was Tillman's reality. A masterclass in compartmentalization. His apartment on North Magnolia became ground zero for his deceptions. Morning visits from one woman. Evening visits from another. Text messages sent within minutes of each other, creating completely different realities. To Tabitha, he was the attentive boyfriend interested in her nursing dreams, available when she needed him, understanding about her work schedule. To his pregnant girlfriend, he was the committed father-to-be, working hard to provide for their growing family. But there were signs. There are always signs. Friends noticed changes in Tabitha. She became more secretive about her relationship. Her new boyfriend seemed to monitor her movements, asking detailed questions about where she'd been, who she'd talked to. How many of you watching this have seen these red flags in your own relationships or those of people you care about? Comment below. Your experience might help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. Tabitha's social media presence began to diminish. The woman who once celebrated small joys with regular posts became quieter online. Classic signs of isolation that often precede intimate partner violence. Former partners described Tillman as initially charming but quick to explosive anger when confronted with inconsistencies in his stories. The pregnant girlfriend later told investigators she'd had suspicions but felt trapped, financially dependent and emotionally invested in the relationship. Meanwhile, Tabitha remained unaware of the other woman's existence. She believed Tillman's explanations for his occasional disappearances. Work. Family obligations. The kinds of reasonable explanations that caring partners accept. By July 2022, the pressure was mounting. A pregnant girlfriend asking more questions. A second relationship becoming more serious. Bills piling up. And Tillman's criminal pattern suggesting someone who didn't handle pressure well. On July 7th, all of these carefully balanced deceptions would converge in apartment 508. And when they did, Tillman would make a choice that would forever change 3 lives: his own, his pregnant girlfriend's, and most tragically, Tabitha's. The question that haunts everyone who studies this case is simple: when confronted with the consequences of his lies, why didn't he just tell the truth? Why choose murder over facing reality? July 7, 2022 began like any other summer day in Chicago. The temperature hit 78 degrees. People went to work, made dinner plans, lived their normal lives. Tabitha Tanner had no way of knowing it would be her last day on Earth. 6:30 p.m. Security cameras mounted throughout the North Magnolia apartment building captured everything with cold, digital precision. Tabitha approaches the front entrance. She's dressed in casual summer attire, comfortable, relaxed. Maybe she's thinking about the evening ahead, about the man she believes cares for her. She enters the building, takes the elevator to the 5th floor. The cameras follow her journey up to apartment 508. She knocks. Waits. The door opens. She enters, disappearing from the hallway camera's view. Inside that apartment, we can only imagine the conversation. Maybe they talked about her day at work. Maybe he asked about her nursing school applications. Normal relationship moments that feel haunting in retrospect. 7:15 p.m. The cameras capture another arrival. Miranda Coleman, Tillman's pregnant girlfriend, approaches the building. According to building staff, she wasn't expected that evening. Her body language is different from Tabitha's casual approach. There's determination in her stride. Purpose. She enters the building, heads straight for the elevator. The hallway cameras show Coleman pacing outside apartment 508. Then knocking. Not the gentle knock of an expected visitor, but forceful, demanding attention. Voices begin to rise through the door. Neighbors would later report hearing an argument, though the exact words remain unknown. For 28 minutes, 3 lives intersected in that apartment. 28 minutes during which Tillman faced the collapse of his carefully constructed deceptions. 28 minutes during which he made the choice that would destroy everything. 7:43 p.m. The building's exterior cameras captured what happened next. A body falling 5 stories through the Chicago night air. The footage is grainy, distant, but unmistakable. Tabitha Tanner, stripped of clothing, plummeting toward the alley below. The impact was immediate and fatal. 7:46 p.m., 3 minutes after the fall, surveillance shows Tillman emerging from the building's back exit. He approaches Tabitha's motionless form, stands over her for exactly 17 seconds. Think about that. 17 seconds of looking at what he had done. Then he retreats inside. Makes no calls to emergency services. No attempt to help. No display of remorse or panic. 7:52 p.m. A delivery driver making his rounds discovered Tabitha's body and immediately called 911. First responders arrived within minutes, but it was too late. Tabitha Tanner was pronounced dead at the scene at 8:06 p.m. The medical examiner's findings told the story of her final moments: multiple impact injuries, a broken shin bone, extensive facial trauma, a lacerated heart. But perhaps most telling was the fact that her body was discovered without clothing, suggesting violence had occurred before the fall. In less than 2 hours, what had begun as a normal evening had transformed into a homicide scene. 3 people had entered that apartment building that night. Only 2 would leave alive. Before we continue with the investigation that followed, take a moment to process what we've just walked through. And if this case is affecting you the way it's affecting me, hit that like button and let me know in the comments, what goes through your mind when you hear about cases like this. When Chicago police arrived at the scene that July evening, they found themselves facing a puzzle with pieces scattered across surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and witness testimony. But sometimes, the most compelling evidence comes from the suspect's own mouth. Detective Sarah Matthews had been investigating homicides for 12 years. She'd seen suspects lie, cry, rage, and deny. But she'd rarely seen someone as calm as Tyson Tillman appeared during his initial questioning. His story changed multiple times in those first hours. First, he claimed Tabitha had never been at his apartment. Then, when confronted with surveillance footage, he admitted she'd visited but said she'd left safely. When pressed about the timing of her death coinciding with his girlfriend's unexpected arrival, he became vague, evasive. Meanwhile, forensic teams were building an airtight case. The apartment showed signs of struggle.
Here.
Blood spatter analysis indicated violence had occurred near the open window.
This is the bill.
DNA evidence placed all three individuals in the same space during the critical time frame. But the surveillance footage was the prosecution's strongest asset. Multiple angles captured the entire sequence: Tabitha's arrival, Coleman's unexpected visit, and most damning of all, Tillman checking on Tabitha's body in the alley. Tillman had been at the station for hours. Lawyers had been called. Paperwork was being processed. And then, seemingly unaware that an officer's body camera was still recording, Tillman made a phone call while still in the police station saying, "I threw the bitch out the window." 6 words. Spoken casually, matter-of-factly, as if he was describing taking out the trash. Detective Matthews would later say that in her 12 years investigating homicides, she'd never heard a confession delivered with such chilling indifference. Those 6 words transformed what might have been a complex circumstantial case into something else entirely. Within 48 hours of Tabitha's death, Tillman was formally charged with first-degree murder, the most severe charge possible under Illinois law. The case against him was overwhelming. Surveillance footage establishing timeline and opportunity. Forensic evidence placing all parties in the apartment during the critical window. Physical evidence of violence in the apartment. And now, his own recorded confession. But perhaps what made this confession so disturbing wasn't just the admission of guilt, it was the complete absence of remorse. No emotion. No explanation. No acknowledgement that a human life had been lost. Just 6 words that would echo through a courtroom and haunt everyone who heard them. As news of the confession spread, one question dominated every conversation: how does someone kill another person and then discuss it as casually as ordering lunch? The answer would reveal something chilling about the capacity for violence that can hide behind the most ordinary facades. July 9, 2022. 2 days after Tabitha Tanner's body was found in that Chicago alley, Tyson Tillman stood before Judge Barbara Sullivan for his bail hearing. The case had already attracted significant media attention. A woman thrown from a 5th-floor window. A recorded confession. The kind of details that dominate local news cycles. Tillman's defense attorney, Marcus Webb, attempted to create reasonable doubt from the very beginning. He argued that there might be more to the story than prosecutors were revealing. Mental health issues. A moment of panic rather than premeditated murder. Webb requested psychological evaluations, pointing to Tillman's history of untreated mental health concerns. He suggested that his client's extensive criminal record showed a pattern of poor decision-making rather than violent tendencies. This is not the case of a cold-blooded killer, Webb argued. This is the case of a man whose untreated mental illness culminated in a tragic moment of lost control. But prosecutor Jennifer Chen wasn't buying it. "Your Honor," Chen countered, "we have surveillance footage showing the defendant calmly checking on the victim's body after throwing her from his window. We have a recorded confession made casually, without remorse. This wasn't a moment of lost control, this was calculated violence followed by callous indifference." Chen methodically presented the evidence, the timeline established by surveillance cameras. The forensic evidence from the apartment. The victim's injuries consistent with being thrown rather than falling accidentally. And then, the confession. "I threw her out the window." Judge Sullivan listened to both sides before making her decision. "The court finds that the evidence presented is overwhelming," she declared. "The defendant poses a significant threat to public safety. Bail is denied." Tillman would remain in Cook County Jail pending trial. But the legal maneuvering was just beginning. Webb's team pivoted to building an insanity defense, arguing that Tillman's mental state at the time of the crime rendered him unable to understand the nature of his actions. They requested access to his complete medical history, sought independent psychological evaluations, and began building a narrative of untreated mental illness exacerbated by substance abuse and relationship pressure. Meanwhile, the prosecution continued strengthening their case. They interviewed neighbors who reported hearing arguments. They analyzed cell phone data showing Tillman's communications with both women in the days leading up to the murder. Most importantly, they prepared to tell Tabitha's story, not just how she died, but who she was. Her dreams of becoming a nurse. Her close relationship with her mother. The future that was stolen from her. As the case moved through pre-trial motions, one thing became clear: this wouldn't be a trial about whether Tillman killed Tabitha Tanner. His confession had settled that question. This would be a trial about why, and whether that why would save him from life in prison. The trial date was set for early 2023, giving both sides months to prepare for what would become one of Chicago's most closely watched murder trials. But while lawyers argued about mental health evaluations and evidence admissibility, a broader conversation was beginning across the city about the systemic failures that had allowed this tragedy to occur. While Tyson Tillman sat in Cook County Jail awaiting trial, his case sparked a much larger conversation about the systems that had failed to prevent Tabitha Tanner's death. The Chicago Police Department responds to approximately 500 domestic violence calls every single day. Every day. In 2022 alone, the year Tabitha lost her life, more than 35 people died in domestic violence incidents throughout the city. She was not an isolated case. She was part of a devastating pattern. But Tabitha's case illuminated another critical failure: how our justice system manages repeat offenders. Think about this: Tyson Tillman had 8 prior felony convictions spanning nearly 2 decades. 8 separate opportunities for intervention. 8 moments when the system could have recognized an escalating pattern. Instead, he cycled through the familiar pattern: arrest, conviction, release, repeat. Each time returning to the streets with minimal supervision, no mandatory mental health treatment, no programs designed to interrupt the cycle of criminal behavior. The case dominated Chicago media for weeks. Local news outlets initially focused on the shocking details: the 5th floor fall, the surveillance footage, the recorded confession. But as the story developed, coverage shifted to examining the structural problems it exposed. How many more Tabithas have to die, one editorial asked, before we address the gaps in our system that allow dangerous individuals to remain in our communities? Victim advocacy groups seized on the case to push for stronger domestic violence prevention programs. They pointed out that warning signs of intimate partner violence are often visible to trained observers, but only if systems exist to identify and respond to them. Criminal justice reform advocates use Tillman's record to highlight the failure of purely punitive approaches to repeat offenders. Without addressing underlying issues, mental health, substance abuse, anger management, the cycle continues indefinitely. The public reaction was intense and divided. Some called for longer sentences for repeat offenders. Others advocated for better rehabilitation programs. Many simply expressed frustration with a system that seemed designed to fail. But perhaps most importantly, the case prompted renewed attention to resources for potential victims. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline offers 24/7 assistance at 1-800-799-7233. In Chicago specifically, organizations like Between Friends and the Network provide emergency shelter, legal advocacy, and counseling services. The question that emerged from community discussions wasn't just how to punish people like Tillman after they commit violence, but how to intervene before they reach that point. Could better mental health screening in the criminal justice system have identified Tillman's potential for violence? Could domestic violence prevention programs have helped Tabitha recognize the danger signs in her relationship? These aren't abstract policy questions. These are matters of life and death. Because while we debate systems and policies and prevention strategies, we cannot forget that at the center of this case is a real person who will never get to pursue her nursing dreams, never see another Chicago sunset, never laugh with friends over coffee. Tabitha Tanner deserved better from all of us. We began this story with a question: how well do you truly know the person sharing your bed? But after walking through Tabitha Tanner's final days, I think the more important question is this: how well do we know the warning signs that could save a life? The isolation. The controlling behavior. The explosive anger when confronted with inconsistencies. The pattern of deception that Tillman perfected across multiple relationships. These weren't subtle warning signs visible only in hindsight. These were red flags that could have been recognized, addressed, escaped from, if the right systems and support had been in place. How many of you watching this have seen similar patterns in your own lives or the lives of people you care about? That friend whose new boyfriend seems to be isolating her from everyone else. The coworker who stopped talking about her relationship problems. The family member whose partner seems to monitor their every move. I want you to comment below, not with personal details, but with the warning signs you think everyone should know. Your insight might help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. Tabitha's case also forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our criminal justice system. Tillman's 8 prior felony convictions weren't just statistics in a file, they were missed opportunities for intervention. What if mental health treatment had been mandatory? What if substance abuse counseling was standard? What if domestic violence risk assessment was part of every release decision? The surveillance cameras that captured Tabitha's final moments tell us something else: violence often happens in plain sight. The systems to document it exist. The technology to preserve evidence is available. But documentation isn't prevention. Recording isn't protection. At 33, Tabitha was still working toward her nursing degree. Still saving tips from her diner shifts. Still believing in the possibility of building something better. Her Instagram posts about small joys, perfect coffee, Chicago sunsets, vintage jewelry, weren't the curations of someone living lavishly. They were celebrations of hope. Proof that even when life is hard, beauty can be found. That optimism, that faith in human goodness, that belief that people can change if given enough chances, these weren't character flaws that led to her death. These were qualities that made her human. The window of Tillman's 5th-floor apartment has become more than just a crime scene. It represents a convergence of failures, failed relationships, failed systems, failed opportunities for intervention. As this case moves through the legal system, Tillman will face the consequences of his choice. But legal justice, while necessary, cannot undo the loss. Cannot restore Tabitha's dreams. Cannot heal her family's grief. Cannot answer the haunting question of what might have been different. Tabitha's mother, Antoinette, spoke at a domestic violence prevention event months after her daughter's death. She said something that stays with me. My daughter saw good in everyone. I don't want her kindness to be remembered as a weakness. I want it to inspire strength, the strength to recognize danger, the strength to seek help, the strength to believe that we can do better. If Tabitha's story has affected you, if you've recognized warning signs in your own life or the lives of people you care about, please reach out for help. The resources are there. The support systems exist. Your life is worth protecting. Your dreams matter. Your safety is not negotiable. And if this case has shown you anything about the importance of telling these stories, of learning from these tragedies, of working to prevent the next one, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell. Share this video. Join the conversation in the comments. What do you think could have saved Tabitha? What warning signs do you think everyone should know? What changes do you want to see in how we address domestic violence? Because sometimes, understanding one tragedy is the first step toward preventing another. Tabitha Tanner. December 6, 1988 to July 7, 2022. 33 years old. Daughter. Friend. Dreamer. A life that mattered. A story that must be remembered. A tragedy that must teach us to do better. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of a community that refuses to let these stories be forgotten. Until next time, take care of each other.
In the heart of California's inland empire lies a place where serenity reigns, where the landscape stretches wide and vast, and where, for years, the community has embraced the quiet calm of rural life. Olive Dell Ranch, nestled away from the hustle of city living, is a small nudist colony surrounded by nature and framed by rolling hills. To outsiders, it might seem strange, but to the people who call it home, it's peaceful, a refuge, where acceptance is as natural as the air they breathe. But on one August morning in 2024, that tranquility would shatter. A community built on trust, openness, and connection was about to find itself torn apart by something far darker than anyone could have imagined. At the center of this peaceful existence were Dan and Stephanie Menard, a couple in their early 70s, whose lives seemed as ordinary and unremarkable as anyone else's in the ranch. They had lived there for over a decade, part of the community, a face in the crowd. Dan was a quiet man, strong and dependable, with years of experience working with his hands. Stephanie, his devoted wife, was warm and welcoming, always offering a smile to anyone who needed it. They had been known for their love of the outdoors, often seen walking hand in hand along the dusty trails, taking in the beauty of their surroundings. Yet, for all their simplicity and familiarity, there were forces moving beneath the surface, forces that no one could see. Behind the walls of seemingly happy homes, under the casual exchanges with neighbors, everyone had secrets, and for some, those secrets could be deadly. On that fateful morning, Dan and Stephanie Menard would go missing. The silence was first noticed around noon, when a neighbor, accustomed to seeing them around, realized they hadn't been out for their daily walk. Then a few more hours passed, and still no sign of them. Calls to their cabin went unanswered. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a small concern, perhaps a routine disruption, until the hours stretched into the evening. And when evening fell, that peaceful community knew something wasn't right. A 62-year-old man with a quiet presence, Sparks had lived on the ranch for nearly as long as the Menards. Reserved, not one for sharing much, he kept to himself, but his behavior recently had raised questions. Neighbors noticed his eyes darting quickly when he passed by them. His movements, once slow and predictable, had become erratic, unsettling. Sparks had always been a man who stayed on the fringe, never a leader, but someone who blended into the background. But this time he couldn't blend in. This time his actions would stand out in a way no one ever expected. It would soon be revealed that the secret he had been hiding for months would destroy the very community that trusted him. The Menards were gone, and something told the neighbors that they weren't just missing, they were lost, and the quiet little ranch they once knew would never be the same again. This peaceful community was about to be shattered by a dark secret. Stay with us to find out the truth behind this mysterious disappearance. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to follow the investigation. The first sign of something wrong came when the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the serene hills of Olive Dell Ranch. By this time, it wasn't just the absence of Dan and Stephanie's daily walk that had raised alarm, it was the silence that surrounded their cabin. Their absence wasn't like the usual quiet days where they'd retreat inside for an afternoon nap or a conversation with a friend. This was different. This was an unsettling stillness. Neighbors began to gather, exchanging glances that were more than casual. Questions were asked, but the answers were never quite right. Maybe they're at the store, one neighbor offered, but there was no convincing tone behind the words. Another suggested they had gone on one of their usual nature hikes, something that they loved to do together, and simply hadn't returned yet. But as the hours dragged on and nightfall settled in like a heavy cloak, the concern grew. By now, no one had seen the Menards, not since the morning. No one had heard from them. Not a word. No signs of life. No reassuring wave through a window. And worst of all, no one knew where they were. By 10 p.m., the ranch was buzzing with unease. A small group had gathered at the Menards' cabin, hoping to find some clue, anything that would explain their sudden disappearance. The door was unlocked, as it often was when the couple had gone on one of their many outings around the ranch, but inside, things didn't add up. The living room was tidy, but there were no signs of them having just stepped out. A half-finished puzzle lay on the coffee table, an unfinished book on the armchair. Their jackets, which were normally hung neatly by the door, were nowhere to be found. Stephanie's purse was still in the same spot where she'd left it that morning, but there was no sign of the keys. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. With no answers and panic starting to rise, one of the neighbors called Michael Sparks, someone who, though distant, had been friendly with Menards. Perhaps they thought he had seen something. When Sparks arrived at the Menards' cabin, he seemed as always outwardly calm, but his eyes, those sharp, darting eyes, told a different story. He scanned the room quickly, never staying in one place for too long. His answers to their questions were vague, almost rehearsed. "I haven't seen them today," he muttered before retreating into his shell, like a man who had grown used to hiding things. But there was something about his presence that sent a chill through the group. He wasn't behaving like himself, and his reaction to the search didn't sit right with anyone. Most people would have been concerned, maybe even a little scared, but Sparks seemed detached, as though he were merely an observer rather than someone who should be actively helping. "Maybe you should call the sheriff," someone suggested. And so, it was done. The sheriff was called, and soon a search party was organized. They scoured the ranch in the growing darkness, combing the trails and checking the areas the Menards were known to frequent. As the hours ticked by, the hope that this was just some small misunderstanding began to fade, replaced by the unsettling feeling that something far more sinister had occurred. As midnight approached, the sheriff called in backup from the local authorities, and a full investigation began. They searched the nearby areas, calling for the Menards in the dark, but the search turned up nothing. They found no footprints leading away from the cabin, no signs of struggle, no dropped personal items, just nothing. But one thing did catch their attention. A strange detail that sent a wave of unease through the sheriff's department, a single blood-stained cloth found near the edge of the property. It was small, almost insignificant, but the unmistakable red stain told them everything they needed to know. It was the first sign that this was no ordinary disappearance. This was the beginning of a much darker story. The Menards were missing, and the ranch, once a peaceful haven, was about to become the center of an investigation that would uncover secrets buried deep beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect community. The search for Dan and Stephanie Menard has just begun, but the signs are pointing to something much darker. Could Michael Sparks be hiding something? Keep watching to discover the truth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any details from this chilling investigation. The search for Dan and Stephanie Menard was growing more serious by the hour. What started as a missing persons report had turned into something much bigger. The sheriff's office had called in extra help, with more officers and volunteers joining the search. But by morning, they had found nothing, no sign of the couple anywhere. The ranch, usually peaceful, felt eerily quiet. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were replaced with worried whispers from neighbors and the sound of boots on the ground as the searchers walked through the area. Detective Diana Harper, a seasoned investigator, arrived to help. She had been briefed on the situation, and from what she knew, this wasn't just a missing persons case. Something didn't feel right. The blood-stained cloth found near the Menards' cabin, the fact that no one had seen them all day, and the strange behavior of their neighbor Michael Sparks, it all seemed too suspicious to ignore. Harper looked around, taking in everything. She had been on many cases before, but this one felt different. The Menards had been part of the community for years, and it didn't make sense for them to just disappear. The blood on the cloth and the missing phone were signs that something far worse had happened. After a long day of searching, things started to fall into place. A searcher found a phone near the cabin, half buried in the dirt. It was Dan and Stephanie's phone, cracked and stained with something dark, likely blood. That was the final proof Harper needed. This wasn't just a disappearance, it was a sign that the Menards had been hurt. Harper took a moment to examine the phone. This discovery was huge, but it only made the case more complicated. Now they knew that the Menards had been harmed, but by whom? And why? With the phone in hand, Harper was sure of one thing. She needed to speak to Michael Sparks again. His strange behavior was starting to make her suspicious, and it was time to ask him some serious questions. The discovery of the phone changed everything. With blood on it and the mystery deepening, Detective Harper is ready to confront Michael Sparks. Will he tell the truth? Keep watching to find out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on this case. By the time Detective Harper returned to the Menards' cabin, the search was starting to wind down. The day had been long, and there were still no answers. But Harper wasn't ready to give up. Not now. Not when everything seemed to point back to Michael Sparks. Sparks had been distant, almost too calm during the search. His answers had been short, and something about his behavior didn't sit right with Harper. He was hiding something. She could feel it. The phone, the bloodstained cloth, the strange way he'd acted all day, it was too much to ignore. Harper arrived at Sparks' cabin just as the sun began to set. The air was thick with tension. Sparks was sitting outside, staring at the ground as if waiting for her. His hands were clenched into fists, his face tense. "Michael, Harper said, her voice firm, but calm. "I need to talk to you again." Sparks didn't look up, but he nodded. "I already told you everything I know." Harper stepped closer, her gaze never leaving him. "I don't think you have. You're the only one who knows what really happened to Dan and Stephanie." He finally met her eyes, but there was no guilt there, only coldness. "I don't know where they are. I don't know what happened to them." Harper was quiet for a moment, studying him. "You're lying, Michael. We found their phone. We found blood near the cabin. This isn't a missing persons case anymore. Someone hurt them, and I think you know who." Sparks' body stiffened. For a second, his eyes darted to the side, but he quickly looked back at Harper. The silence between them grew heavy, and Harper could see his walls starting to crack. I didn't mean for it to happen," Sparks said, his voice shaking now. It just happened." Harper's heart raced as she listened. This was it. He was breaking. She pressed further, her voice calm but firm. "What happened, Michael? Why did you do it?" He closed his eyes, letting out a deep breath. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he finally spoke. "They were going to expose me. They knew about the money, the deals I had made. I couldn't let them ruin everything. They threatened to tell the others in the community. I couldn't let them do that." Harper took a step back, her mind racing as she pieced together his confession. Money, secrets, and a hidden motive, it all made sense now. Sparks wasn't just a witness. He was the one who had killed the Menards. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Sparks continued, his voice breaking. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt. But I couldn't stop it once it started." Harper knew the truth now, but the confession still felt empty. There was no remorse in his eyes, only fear. Fear of what was coming next. Fear of the consequences. She pulled out her phone, dialed the sheriff's office, and calmly spoke into the receiver. "We have a confession. Get here now. Michael Sparks is under arrest for the murders of Dan and Stephanie Menard." Sparks didn't move, didn't say another word. He just sat there, as if the weight of his actions had finally caught up with him. And in that moment, Harper knew this case was over. But the damage had already been done. The Menards were gone, and no confession could bring them back. Michael Sparks has confessed, but what pushed him to murder? Stay tuned for more updates as we uncover the full truth behind this shocking crime. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep following this investigation. The arrest of Michael Sparks didn't bring the peace that the residents of Olive Dell Ranch had hoped for. It brought only more questions and an unsettling sense of finality. The shock of the murders still lingered in the air. The peaceful community, now forever changed by the secrets that had been revealed. The news spread quickly. The once quiet ranch, known for its acceptance and tranquility, was now the subject of whispered conversations and nervous glances. Michael Sparks, a man who had lived among them for years, was the killer. And for the community, that fact was almost too hard to grasp. In the days following his arrest, Detective Harper watched the aftermath unfold from a distance. The Menards' memorial service was held at a small church near the ranch. The turnout was large. Everyone who knew the Menards came to pay their respects. But even as the community gathered, Harper knew that the pain of this loss ran deeper than anyone could understand. At the service, people spoke fondly of Dan and Stephanie. They shared memories of their quiet lives, of the walks they took through the ranch, and how they always made time for everyone. Their deaths had left a hole in the community, one that couldn't be filled with words or flowers. But as the service continued, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. She knew the truth about what had happened, but the case wasn't over. Michael Sparks might have confessed, but there was more to the story, things that no one had uncovered yet. After the service, Harper stood alone outside the church, the sun setting behind her. She had a lot of paperwork to go through, more interviews to conduct, but she felt a deep sense of exhaustion, as though the weight of the case had taken everything out of her. The Menards were dead and their killer had confessed, but the motives behind it all were still unclear. What had driven Sparks to kill them? What had pushed him over the edge? Harper turned and headed back to her car, the questions still swirling in her mind. She knew she couldn't stop now. The case wasn't over until she had all the answers. As she drove back to the station, Harper reflected on the community she had just left behind. Olive Dell Ranch had been built on trust, on openness, on people who were meant to share a safe space together. But in the end, it had been secrets, hidden motives, and betrayal that had led to this tragedy. The Menards' deaths have left the community broken, and the truth behind Michael Sparks' actions is still unfolding. Stay with us as we uncover the final pieces of this chilling case. Like, share, and subscribe to follow the investigation until the very end. It had been a week since Michael Sparks' confession. The legal proceedings had begun, but the true impact of the tragedy still hung heavily over Olive Dell Ranch. The arrest had brought a sense of finality, but it had also left behind a lingering sadness. The Menards' deaths had shattered the peace that the community had always known. Detective Harper sat at her desk, the dim light of her office casting long shadows over the piles of paperwork in front of her. She had closed the case, but the memory of it still weighed on her. Cases like this never truly left her. The people she investigated, the lives that were lost, it all stayed with her, haunting her long after the investigation was over. As she looked at the final reports on the Menards case, Harper couldn't help but think about the events that had led to this tragedy. Michael Sparks had been a quiet, almost invisible man to those who knew him. But beneath the surface, there had been dark secrets he had tried to bury in order to protect himself. His confession had come with a broken heart and a man on the verge of breaking down. But it hadn't been enough to bring back the lives he had taken. The community had rallied together after the shock, but the damage had been done. Dan and Stephanie's friends still couldn't believe that they were gone. Their cabin, once a place of laughter and warmth, stood empty now, a reminder of how fragile peace really was. The people of Olive Dell Ranch would never forget the Menards. They would never forget what happened here. Harper rubbed her eyes, exhausted from the long hours she had put in on this case. The justice system would do its work, but nothing would bring the Menards back. She had done her part, but the emotional weight of the case was a heavy burden to carry. For the first time in a long while, she found herself wondering if there was ever really a way to heal after such a loss. Maybe some wounds never really closed. As she gathered the final papers and placed them in the file, she felt a deep sense of closure, but also a sadness that would stay with her for a long time. She wasn't sure if she'd ever fully understand what had driven Michael Sparks to murder the Menards. Maybe it was the pressure of his own lies, the fear of losing everything he'd worked for. Or maybe it was something deeper, something dark that had always been inside him, waiting for the right moment to come out. Harper looked up at the clock. It was late, but she still had work to do. As she stood to leave, she thought about the Menards, about the way their lives had ended so suddenly. She knew the answers, but the questions still lingered in her mind unanswered. What would have happened if Sparks had never gone too far? What would have happened if he had simply walked away? In the end, there would be no easy answers, just the haunting memory of a peaceful community destroyed by one man's darkest secrets. The case of the Menards is over, but the questions still remain. What drives a person to commit such an act? The story may be finished, but the impact of this tragedy will linger forever. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime investigations.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
Mr. O'Neill,
All right.
Listen, stop.
All right.
Listen to me.
I'm not
You're not going to raise your voice again.
I'm not going to raise my voice again. I'm not.
I will have you removed from this court.
How does a seemingly ordinary family evening, filled with the comforting rituals of daily life, dissolve into a night of unimaginable horror? How does the warmth of a home, a sanctuary meant for love and security, become the stage for a tragedy that defies the very essence of humanity? This is the haunting question at the heart of a story that has left an indelible mark on all who have come to know its chilling details. In the serene neighborhood of Riverview, Florida, where families often find solace in the predictability of suburban life, a strange shadow loomed one March evening in 2018.
It was a night that would forever alter the lives of those involved and ripple through the community with a shockwave of grief and disbelief. At the center of this storm stands Ronnie O'Neill III, a figure whose actions would unravel the fabric of a family and challenge the very foundations of our understanding of compassion and cruelty. The victims, Kenyatta Barron and her young daughter, Ron Nivea, were more than just tragic figures in a courtroom drama. They were a mother and child caught in a vortex of violence, their lives cut tragically short by an act of unfathomable brutality. Kenyatta, a devoted mother whose dreams and aspirations were intertwined with her children's futures, and Ron Nivea, a 9-year-old girl with special needs whose innocence was met with unspeakable horror, now symbolize a profound and heartbreaking loss. As we embark on this journey into the depths of one of the most disturbing cases in recent memory, we aim to uncover not only the facts but the emotional and legal complexities that surround this dark chapter. What drove Ronnie O'Neill to commit such acts of violence against those he should have protected? What truths lie buried beneath the chaos of that fateful night? And what can we, as a society, learn from this harrowing tale of betrayal and loss? Join us as we delve into the intricacies of this case, exploring the corridors of justice, the complexities of the human psyche, and the enduring quest for answers in the wake of unimaginable tragedy. This is not merely a story of crime and punishment, it is a search for understanding, empathy, and perhaps a glimmer of hope amidst the shadows. Welcome to True Crime Tales HQ. I sincerely thank you, my esteemed viewers, most especially my subscribers, for your endless support. At True Crime Tales HQ we share true told and untold crime stories. Please don't forget to subscribe if you are yet to subscribe to this channel. In the story of life, every person weaves their own unique tale, and Kenyatta Barron's story was stitched with love, strength, and a deep commitment to her children. Kenyatta wasn't just a mother, she was like a guiding light, always ready to support and care for those around her. People who knew her often spoke about her smile, which could brighten even the darkest days. Her way of living was filled with kindness and warmth, leaving a lasting impression on everyone she encountered. Kenyatta's dreams were both simple and meaningful. She wanted her children to have a life full of happiness and possibilities. Her role as a mother was more than just a duty, it was her passion. She embraced it with a joyful heart and open arms. No matter what challenges or successes came her way, Kenyatta's love for her children was unwavering, leading her through every moment. One of her beloved children was Ron Nivea O'Neill, a 9-year-old girl who had a spirit full of brightness and energy. Ron Nivea was born with special needs, and although the world sometimes seemed to place hurdles in her path, she faced them with courage and resilience. Thanks to her mother's constant support, Ron Nivea met each challenge with a brave smile. Her laughter was pure and infectious, echoing through their home and showcasing the joy and innocence she carried with her. Ron Nivea's life was about overcoming obstacles, and each day brought small victories that spoke volumes about her strength. Her relationship with her family, especially her mother, was deep and strong. Together, they walked a path filled with love and understanding, cherishing the beauty in every shared moment. The Barron family lived at the heart of their community, a symbol of togetherness and strength. Their home was a place of warmth and joy, reflecting the love that connected them. Neighbors remember them as a family who was engaged and well-loved, always ready to participate in community events and form bonds that went beyond mere friendliness. Before the tragic events unfolded, life for Kenyatta and her children was made up of everyday moments, school days, family meals, and dreams shared under the night sky. It was a life defined by the simple pleasures and challenges that come with being human, a life that was unknowingly on the edge of a profound and irreversible change. As we explore this story further, we hold these cherished memories close, honoring the love and light that Kenyatta and Ron Nivea brought into the world. Though their story has shadows of tragedy, it also highlights the lasting power of love and the deep impact one person's life can have on many others. This is a story of love, resilience, and the enduring connections that define us all. To understand the complex story of Ronnie O'Neill III, we must take a closer look at his past, exploring the details of his life that might have led to the tragic events we are unraveling today. Ronnie's journey begins in a world filled with challenges and experiences that shaped the man he would become. Born into a family that faced its own set of difficulties, Ronnie grew up in an environment that was far from stable. His childhood, marked by various trials, set the stage for a life that would later spiral into darkness. As a young boy, Ronnie experienced a home life that was often turbulent. The stability that many children take for granted was not always present for him. Family dynamics were complex, and the support systems that could have provided guidance were sometimes lacking. These early years are crucial in understanding how Ronnie's character was formed. Growing up, he encountered both care and neglect, moments of kindness overshadowed by periods of uncertainty and hardship. School life, too, was a mixed experience for Ronnie. While he had the potential and intelligence to excel, his academic journey was inconsistent. Teachers and peers might recall moments when Ronnie showed promise, yet there were also times when he struggled to fit in, when his behavior set him apart. These social challenges likely contributed to a growing sense of isolation and frustration during his formative years, feelings that could linger and manifest in troubling ways later in life. Ronnie's personality developed under these circumstances, reflecting a blend of resilience and volatility. Those who knew him describe a man capable of charm and charisma, yet someone who could quickly become unpredictable and intense. Ronnie's character was layered and complex, with moods that could shift suddenly. These traits, combined with a growing inner turmoil, painted a picture of a man struggling to find his place in the world. As Ronnie transitioned into adulthood, the pressures of life only intensified. He faced difficulties that many might find overwhelming, grappling with responsibilities and expectations that sometimes felt insurmountable. Throughout this period, signs of mental health struggles began to surface. Ronnie exhibited behaviors that suggested deeper issues beneath the surface. Reports and evaluations pointed to possible mental health conditions, such as PTSD and delusional disorder, which affected his perception and actions. Experts who studied Ronnie's case emphasized these mental health challenges as significant factors in his life. These conditions, often untreated or inadequately addressed, can distort reality and influence behavior in profound ways. For Ronnie, these psychological struggles might have clouded his judgment, blurring the lines between right and wrong, reality and imagination. Through psychological evaluations, insights into Ronnie's mindset emerged. These assessments revealed a man caught in a web of confusion and fear, driven by perceptions that did not always align with reality. His motivations, though complex, seemed rooted in a distorted view of the world around him, a perspective shaped by past traumas and present stressors. As we piece together the story of Ronnie O'Neill III, we see a life marked by significant challenges and internal battles. It is a portrait of a man whose path diverged into tragedy, influenced by a combination of environmental factors, personality traits, and mental health issues. This understanding is vital as we seek to comprehend the events that unfolded, offering a glimpse into the mind of a man whose actions defied comprehension and whose story serves as a somber reminder of the complexities of the human psyche. The day was March 18, 2018, and it began like any other in the quiet neighborhood of Riverview, Florida. The sun rose, casting a golden glow over the suburban streets, where residents went about their daily routines, unaware of the darkness that would soon descend upon one of their own. It was a Sunday, typically a day for family gatherings, rest, and reflection. But for Kenyatta Barron and her children, the day would spiral into a nightmare that no one could have foreseen. As the day unfolded, there were few indications of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Neighbors later recalled seeing Kenyatta and her children engaging in their usual activities, with nothing amiss to suggest the violence that was about to erupt. Ronnie O'Neill III, Kenyatta's partner, was present at the home. According to accounts pieced together from various sources, tensions simmered beneath the veneer of normalcy. There were arguments and disagreements, but such conflicts were not uncommon in the household. As daylight faded and evening approached, the atmosphere in the barren home grew increasingly volatile. Witnesses reported hearing raised voices, the sounds of a domestic dispute escalating beyond control. It was during these tense moments that the horror of the night began to unfold. What started as an argument soon turned into a scene of chaos and terror. The details of the crime are harrowing, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the depths to which human behavior can plunge. Ronnie O'Neill III, in a fit of rage and delusion, unleashed a brutal attack on his family. The exact sequence of events remains a puzzle of fear and turmoil, but what is known is that Kenyatta Barron fought desperately to protect her children. Her cries for help echoed through the night, a haunting sound that neighbors would later recount with horror. Ron Nivea, the innocent 9-year-old girl with special needs, was caught in the crossfire of this unimaginable violence. Her vulnerability, which in any other circumstance would have evoked protection and care, became a tragic element of the night's events. The methodical cruelty of the attack left the small community in shock, unable to comprehend how such brutality could occur within the confines of a family home. As the night wore on, the crime came to the attention of law enforcement through a chilling 911 call. Kenyatta herself, injured and desperate, managed to convey the terror unfolding in her home. The call was a lifeline, a plea for intervention as darkness threatened to consume all hope. When officers arrived at the scene, they were met with a tableau of devastation that would linger in their memories long after they left. The immediate aftermath of the crime was marked by confusion and disbelief. News of the tragedy spread quickly through the community, leaving neighbors and friends grappling with a mix of shock and sorrow. The realization that such violence could erupt in their midst shattered the sense of safety that many had taken for granted. Law enforcement, too, was faced with the daunting task of piecing together the events of that night, trying to understand the motivations behind such senseless acts. In the days that followed, the community rallied together, driven by a need to support one another in the face of such profound loss. Vigils were held, and prayers were offered, as people sought to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos. The crime had left a scar not only on those directly involved but on everyone who heard its echoes. As we delve deeper into this narrative, we are reminded of the unpredictable nature of human behavior and the thin line between love and violence. The story of that night in Riverview is not just a tale of crime, it is a reflection of the complexities of the human heart and the fragile bonds that tie us together. It invites us to question, to reflect, and to seek understanding in a world where darkness and light coexist. In the quiet suburb of Riverview, Florida, a night of horror would soon unravel into an investigation that tested the limits of law enforcement's resolve and expertise. The emergency call had come in the dead of night, a desperate plea for help from a voice drenched in terror. As first responders converged on the scene, the gravity of what awaited them began to unfold. The police arrived swiftly, their sirens slicing through the stillness of the night. Officers were immediately confronted with a scene of chaos and destruction, the aftermath of a brutal rampage. Their first task was to secure the area, ensuring that any potential threats were neutralized and that the integrity of the crime scene was maintained. With methodical precision, crime scene tape was unfurled, marking the boundaries of a place forever altered by violence. Inside the home, investigators moved with a meticulousness born of experience, knowing that every detail could be a crucial piece of the puzzle. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke, a testament to the fire that had ravaged parts of the house. Amidst the charred remains, forensic teams began their painstaking work. They meticulously catalogued evidence, from the remnants of weapons to the bloodstains that told their own story of the night's events. Central to the investigation were the testimonies of those who had witnessed the horror firsthand. Among these voices, the most poignant was that of Ronnie O'Neill's surviving son, a young boy thrust into a nightmare from which he narrowly escaped. His testimony was a tapestry of courage and tragedy, offering insights that only an eyewitness could provide. Despite the trauma, he recounted the events with a clarity that underscored the terror of that night. His words painted a vivid picture of a father transformed into a figure of unimaginable fear, a narrative that aligned with the physical evidence collected by forensic experts. The investigation was propelled forward by several pivotal breakthroughs. One such moment came with the analysis of the 911 call made by Kenyatta Barron, O'Neill's girlfriend. This recording, a haunting chronicle of the attack, provided a timeline of events and captured the chilling reality of the violence that unfolded. It was a piece of evidence that corroborated the young boy's testimony, adding weight to the narrative of brutality. Another significant discovery was the forensic examination of the fire's origin. Investigators determined that the blaze was deliberately set, a calculated act intended to destroy evidence and lives alike. This finding not only established intent but also framed the sequence of actions that culminated in that night's devastation. The investigation was a testament to the dedication and expertise of law enforcement, an unwavering pursuit of truth in the face of unspeakable tragedy. It illuminated the darkest corners of human behavior while seeking justice for those whose lives were irrevocably changed. As the pieces fell into place, the narrative that emerged was one of horror and heartbreak, but also one of resilience and the relentless quest for justice. As the investigation wrapped up, law enforcement had gathered enough evidence to arrest Ronnie O'Neill III. The charges against him were severe: 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their daughter, Ron Nivea, and attempted first-degree murder for attacking his son. These charges were a reflection of the horrific nature of the crime that shocked the community to its core. The legal process that followed was just as dramatic as the events leading up to it. Ronnie O'Neill made the unusual and controversial decision to represent himself in court. This choice raised many eyebrows and added a layer of unpredictability to the proceedings. Was this a strategic move, or a sign of deeper issues? It was a question that lingered in the minds of many. In the courtroom, O'Neill's self-representation led to some intense and unforgettable moments. He passionately argued his case, often raising his voice as he did during his opening statements. O'Neill claimed that law enforcement had tampered with evidence to frame him, a bold accusation that he hoped would cast doubt on the prosecution's case. On the other side, the prosecution laid out a detailed and compelling narrative, supported by forensic evidence and the emotional testimony of O'Neill's surviving son. They argued that the evidence clearly pointed to O'Neill as the sole perpetrator of these horrific acts. One of the most gripping moments came when O'Neill cross-examined his own son, who bravely testified about the night of the attack. The emotional weight of this interaction was palpable, leaving many in the courtroom questioning the ethics and emotional impact of such a confrontation. After days of intense deliberation and emotional testimonies, the jury reached a verdict. Ronnie O'Neill was found guilty on all counts. The decision brought some measure of closure to the victims' families and the community, affirming the diligent work of the investigators and prosecutors. The judge, in delivering the sentence, did not hold back on expressing the gravity of O'Neill's actions. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with additional penalties for arson and child abuse. As we reflect on this intense legal drama, we are left with questions about the justice system and the choices made within it. Should defendants be allowed to represent themselves in such serious cases? Does this serve justice, or does it create more complications? These are questions that invite viewers to ponder and share their thoughts. If you find this story compelling, we encourage you to like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories. Let's keep the conversation going. The aftermath of the Ronnie O'Neill case left deep scars on the victim's family and rippled through the broader community, altering lives and prompting reflection. The surviving son, who endured unimaginable trauma, faced a long and challenging journey of healing. His resilience became a focal point of community support, as neighbors and strangers alike rallied to provide comfort and resources. The loss of his mother and sister, combined with his own narrow escape, left an indelible mark on his young life. For the community, the crime shattered a sense of safety and trust. It was a stark reminder of the potential for violence in places considered safe and familiar. Vigils and memorials became spaces for communal grieving, allowing people to come together in solidarity and support. Beyond the immediate emotional impact, this case sparked broader societal debates, particularly around mental health and the justice system. There was increased discussion on the importance of mental health awareness and early intervention, with calls for better support systems to prevent such tragedies. The case also highlighted the complexities of allowing defendants to represent themselves, raising questions about the balance between legal rights and the effective pursuit of justice. These societal reflections invite us to think deeply about our collective responsibility in addressing mental health issues and ensuring our justice system is equipped to handle such challenging cases. What steps can we take to improve mental health support and legal processes to prevent future tragedies? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation. The Ronnie O'Neill case serves as a profound reminder of the broader societal and personal lessons we must embrace. It underscores the critical importance of mental health awareness, urging us to recognize and act upon the early signs of distress in ourselves and others. Community vigilance becomes paramount, as we collectively hold the responsibility to support and protect those around us. Furthermore, this case highlights the ongoing need for justice that is both swift and compassionate. We must advocate for a legal system that balances accountability with understanding. Preventing similar tragedies requires a concerted effort to improve mental health resources and education, ensuring that individuals have access to the help they need before it's too late. Let this case inspire us to work towards a society where empathy and proactive support are at the forefront, reducing the likelihood of such devastating events in the future. As we conclude this journey through one of the most harrowing cases in recent memory, we're reminded of the fragility and preciousness of life. This story is not just about tragedy but also about the call to action it inspires within each of us. We have the power to turn this tale of sorrow into a catalyst for change and healing. Let's honor the memories of those lost by supporting victims' families, offering them strength and solidarity as they navigate their grief. Your involvement, whether through community actions or personal gestures of kindness, can provide the comfort and support they need. Moreover, let us become advocates for mental health resources. By encouraging open conversations and supporting initiatives that prioritize mental well-being, we can help build a society where individuals feel safe to seek help without stigma or fear. Together, we can prevent future tragedies by fostering a culture of empathy and vigilance. If this story has moved you, please like and share this video to raise awareness and spark meaningful discussions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge, inform, and inspire. Let's keep this important conversation going and work towards a brighter, more compassionate future.